If you look at the New York Post headline today, and it was a piece by Douglas Murray, very smart guy from the UK, and he had 10 reasons why Ukraine matters and why we have to defend Ukraine. But in those 10 reasons, he didn't mention a single thing about what Ukraine's strengths are.
Before we continue, we invite you to follow our channel, the only American show reporting live from Ukraine every day.
Hello all, this is Joe Lindsley. Good evening from Kyiv, currently under a drone attack, which is pretty much the regular situation every day, every night here. And I know it's been a while since my daily updates. You know, for 3 years, I reported every single day on Chicago's WGN radio. And amazingly, that was all ended just before Christmas, which is quite strange because just as everything is getting quite complicated and back in the news again, almost in a way that Ukraine has not been in the news since 2022. Here we are back in the thick of it. I have a lot of friends working in the White House, so some insights as to what's happening there. People I've known for a long time. Here I am still in Ukraine every day. And so I'm getting back to making my daily reports here, even though we were canceled by corporate radio. And I want to first share, there's so much to catch up on these past weeks and days. And I have written a daily journal about everything I've gone through these past weeks, and it's rather extraordinary. And maybe soon I can talk more about it. Maybe someday it'll be in the movie or the book about these events. But first, I want to say an extraordinary development I want to share with you that I think probably has gotten missed amid all the noise coming from Washington. And there was a moment yesterday when Elon Musk had a small moment of insight into the reality here that has been hidden from most Americans and from the world, really. There's a confusion about Ukraine. And, I think as we look at, why do Americans, for example, who support Trump, why do they oppose Ukraine? And, I know a lot of these people from all over the country, not just those in power, but people just working hard around the country. And there's a deep skepticism of Washington. And it's not really a hatred of Ukraine. It's a hatred of Washington, but they associate Ukraine with the cause of Washington. And that's a whole big thing we can talk about, but I can tell you that from the Ukrainian soldier musicians I know who were recently doing a tour in the U.S., they actually encountered this very idea. Initially, when they would meet Americans, say at like a VFW, there'd be some hostility, and then they'd realize they have a lot in common. So that's a reality that is something that I'm working on trying to help break through. But we had a small breakthrough yesterday when Elon Musk, in one of his many tweets in the past few days against President Zelensky, he said something extraordinary. He acknowledged that Zelensky is right about the American spending on Ukraine. I think Zelensky, God love him, but his English is not always perfect. And a few weeks ago, he said there were billions of dollars missing in American support for Ukraine. And Donald Trump took that and used it in his biggest attack he's ever made on Zelensky. Really something shocking. Just a couple of days ago, he accused Zelensky almost of stealing that money. But the next day, yesterday, on Thursday, the 20th of February, Elon, who is, his team are going through the books. And they're looking at the Pentagon spending. There's a lot of waste there, as even Jon Stewart has applauded Elon for going through and looking at this waste. And Elon is going through the books, and he's starting to see the reality, because the numbers don't lie. And then he sees what Zelensky was trying to say and sort of was unable to articulate, is that out of something that I've reported frequently on my daily show from Ukraine, that most of the money spent, the Ukraine packages, it's not new dollars falling into Ukraine. A lot of it is a valuation of old weapons from like 1980 that the U.S. is giving to Ukraine. They put a price on it, and that goes into the package. But the money was spent long ago. But the other part is actual money that is spent, and that's on new weapons for the U.S. So Elon he realized this in this tweet, which is pretty extraordinary. A little bit of a breakthrough, realizing that, and actually the way Elon put it is that, the money's not going to the Ukrainians, it's going to the Democrats, as he said, and the defense industry. And for me, that's an enormous breakthrough, because right now we've had this situation where Ukraine is, for those leading in Washington now, they tie Ukraine so closely with Joe Biden and the Democrats and all that, when it was really, the Biden administration was restricting Ukraine from winning and playing this game with the numbers that really hurt Ukraine in the American consciousness, because it's not so much money as you think coming here. And so the American defense industry, and I would hope if anyone close to Elon is listening to this, here's the thing that we need to investigate. The Pentagon is always buying new weapons anyway. If there were no Russian war on Ukraine today, how much money would the Pentagon be spending on new weapons. Because my contention and what I'm starting to see is that a lot of what the Pentagon would be buying anyway, as a matter of course, as we go through time, it gets shoved into the Ukraine spending packages. So Ukraine gets the blame for it, and the Pentagon gets the stuff it was going to buy anyway. It really is quite unfair. Anyway, so Elon is starting to realize that. Now he's continued to attack Zelensky, but I think for those who support Ukraine, when you see a moment like that, it's a moment you see a crack of light and say, let's seize upon this, because it is pretty extraordinary. Now, on this sort of in the same genre of topics, this week, now we can talk about it. This week there were two very interesting tech conferences I attended here in Kyiv. One of them is called Brave One. Brave One is a mechanism created by the Ukrainian government to respond to this incredible decentralized, actually really started with the decentralized making of drones in 2022, but there was a decentralized economy of innovation, of military tech innovation in Ukraine. It doesn't happen from big companies. And this has been a shock to American defense industry guys when they come here. Even the ones that are claimed to be innovative, like Anduril, when they come to Ukraine, they almost don't even know how to process it, because you have little laboratories throughout the country where you'll have engineers and school teachers and others innovating and making drones. And Brave One is a mechanism to help bring them together, to have support from the central point, and resources. Most of the resources are private and come from volunteers and people from around the world, but to bring it together in a sensible way while still allowing these little laboratories of innovation to flourish. And the amazing way it works here in Ukraine is, the guys at the front, they need something, or they have a drone and they realize where it doesn't work. They call their friends, they call people like me, they say, hey, we need X, Y, or Z, and quickly. And then quickly, some laboratory somewhere else in the country is able to prepare what the guys need. Someone finds some money, and we do it with our great donors, and we're able to get the tech back into the hands of the guys at the front in a very quick turnaround way, and with real-time information of what works and what doesn't work. And so anyway, there was this wonderful conference called Brave One here this past week. We had to keep it under an embargo because obviously it would be a target for the Russians. And I was talking with a retired American general, Petraeus, I ran into, and he said to me, and I know he was saying to others, he said, this is the most extraordinary event I've ever been to in my life. From a top American general who was once director of CIA. I'm skeptical of CIA, but that's a pretty extraordinary statement. But I completely believe it. And as I was saying at that event, as I was walking through the exhibit hall, where you have all these different stands or booths of mainly Ukrainian defense startups. And they're all, filling some niche, working on improving radio communications, anti-drone jamming technology. Although we're learning that that's becoming more obsolete. The Russians are now using more and more fiber optic cables, like super long, miles long cables to get around the so they can't be intercepted with electronic warfare. And Ukrainians are finding ways to adapt to it. And so this is what you go into this room when we hear all the panic around the world. You hear all the panic around the world. You hear the rhetoric from Washington, and you might think that in Ukraine, in Kyiv, they were panicking. I've seen a lot of headlines sort of suggesting, panic in Kyiv. And you go to this conference, you realize it's the complete opposite. People are barely even talking about what's being said. I mean, okay, people talk about it, but they're focused on their work. And at this Brave One conference, you could go and talk to all these vendors and see men and women who are using every skill they have to create what the soldiers say they need at the front. And it's incredible. It's a beautiful thing. And I think anyone who, like in the orbit of Elon or my friends who work in the White House who are ignoring Ukraine, if they somehow just transported to that, through the Boring Company or something, if they were just transported to Kyiv, to that conference, they would say, you know what? We've been blind. Now we see, wow, these are our people. Ukraine is everything that we want to be. This is the innovation. This is the cheerfulness, the devotion to freedom. This is it here. And that's so much of what I saw at Brave One. And that's why I think General Petraeus said it was the best event he'd ever been to in his life. And even despite that, as we close up here, I mean, we were all gathered at a hotel bar afterwards, and the city was shaking as the Russian drones were attacking Kyiv. And it is sort of extraordinary, adventurous scenes, also with beautiful snowfall happening at the same time. But you have here these sort of superhero people who will face their fears and keep innovating and building. So that was a big thing I want to share from this week, along with Elon's small breakthrough. And I would encourage people on X to try to give some oxygen to that breakthrough. Another thing is J.D. Vance, the vice president. He said, he's saying that Ukraine can't possibly win. And I've known this from many conversations with people in Washington and even pro-Ukraine people who come here to Kyiv. They get negative. They say, there's no possibility of taking Crimea back. And if you listen to all that, it's easy just to become negative. And I realize in these conversations and in looking at J.D. Vance's tweet, no one has ever presented them with the stories of Ukraine's strengths. They really haven't. If you ever seen the TV show Veep, but especially the British show Yes Minister, you'll see the government is chaotic, even with your best intentions. And the information thing is insane. I mean, it all depends on what kind of information you get, but you can get an enormous briefing, and how do you make sense of it? What's your takeaway? And only here in Ukraine do we really feel the possibility of Ukrainian potential. I feel that in the city of Kyiv all the time, 30 miles from Russia, and yet it's a city of incredible innovation and beautiful, clean parks are lovely. Kids walk to school on their own, even despite the threat. Now, that's sort of hard to see. It's easier to talk about the destruction and the absence of a problem doesn't make for a great headline. And for example, like no one has talked about this. As I speak to you here in Kyiv, we have electricity, we have heat, we have internet. Almost everyone was predicting back in August that this would be the winter from hell, and we'd be living like in the Middle Ages, and that we wouldn't be able to pump water up, the high-rise buildings. And none of that has materialized. And so we can definitively say now, as we've crossed the threshold through late February, that this is Russia's third annual failed winter offensive. It's true. It's a total fact. 2 winters ago was extremely difficult. There was barely any electricity. You heard the hum of generators everywhere. It was brutal. But Ukrainians adapted and survived, and they learned to live by candlelight. And Russians tried again last winter, and they tried again for this winter. And despite that, Ukrainian infrastructure is holding on. I think also the Russians realize that, Ukrainians, if they have to, they'll live in the middle, they'll live in the candlelight and find solutions. And so maybe they realize it's not worth it. That's a major story. That's a major success. And I wrote a piece, which I would hope people would help share, at The Hill newspaper, big newspaper in Washington, D.C., thehill.com. The title is Ukraine is Stronger Than Trump Realizes. Here's the Evidence. And I list these five narratives that I think can show that would give. Firstly, it's important that pro-Ukraine advocates have these narratives. People like Piers Morgan, people like General Kellogg. I'm pretty confident that they don't have these clear 5 positive stories of Ukrainian possibility clearly on their mind. If you look at the New York Post headline today, the front page, it was wonderful. They were challenging Trump and saying, no, President Trump, Putin is a dictator. And it was a piece by Douglas Murray, very smart guy from the UK. And he had 10 reasons why Ukraine matters and why we have to defend Ukraine. But in those 10 reasons, he didn't mention a single thing about what Ukraine's strengths are. So if you're trying to reach President Trump, you have to have a winning argument. Imagine you're at the table in The Apprentice. You got to say, hey, look what we've done, and this shows what more we could do. And so that's the point I'm driving home. I really want people to share these 5 stories. If you can, please share the link if you agree on this, of course. And, one of the points, for example, is what Ukrainians have done to Russia's Black Sea Fleet. They've decimated it. And everyone's, all the people now talking about, Crimea in some kind of negotiation, Crimea will be, definitely given to Russia. Well, okay, what does that mean? Because Ukraine already got rid of Russia's navy in the Crimean Peninsula. The navy, third of it was destroyed, and the rest of it had to flee to mainland Russia. So think about that. If you're saying we're giving up Crimea to Russia, okay, well, that means because Russia's already lost its grip in a way on many things in the Black Sea, that means that the navy gets to come back after Ukraine spent 2 years getting rid of it with these innovative sea drones. This is where I want people to really think about these details. And I think one reason why you don't see panic here, I mean, you see people are tired, and the comments and the rhetoric have been hurtful to them for sure. But I don't see panic of people giving up. And it's because, just for starters, these 5 points I make in the Hill newspaper. So, thehill.com. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry that I have not done these daily reports in so long, but we had other things to do. Losing the WGN gave me some space to really help a lot of projects I really wanted to help here during a very tumultuous time. So this is Joe Lindsley reporting from Ukraine. Radio War Day, today, 21st of February. and still under. I'm checking to see what if anything's happened here in Kyiv. Still under air alarm and some kind of drone attack, but still going. So you can support our work at ukrainianfreedomnews.com, and especially, normally we're trying to help with drones, but especially now we have a little information project on which we really, really need help. I can explain details privately to those who really want to support us, but it's quite urgent, and I think it can make a big difference. So, Joe Lindsley talking to you from Kyiv, Ukraine. This is Radio War Day, and until next time, Bachana, thank you.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Що сказав?
Well, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні,
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
на чиїй ти стороні.
Єбать.